Welcome to Tightlining Maryland. If you're tuning in, you're probably here to learn something about Euro nymphing, or at least if nothing else, see the local Maryland conditions and how things are going. So I appreciate you checking out the video. What you're gonna find today is we're gonna fish this stream. We have a really nice cloud cover, fog cover. Let me show you the river real quick. So we're talking ideal conditions. Today what we're gonna have is we're gonna have flows that are around what we would say is about 85 CFS. For this river, a lot of times in the summer, it runs closer to 30 to maybe 40, and I've seen it even as low as 20. But at the end of the day, with 90 CFS, nymphing is gonna be the name of the game. That gives us the depth that we would want, and you know, we can do that in 30 CFS, it's just not as ideal. But at 85 CFS, almost 90, you're talking you have ideal conditions. So what we're gonna use, and I'll show you the setup real quick. We're gonna use our Diamondback Ideal Nymph. It's a 10-foot one weight. And on there, what we've got is an Ideal Nymph 1-2 in size. Really like this combo right now, but we'll talk more about that in another video. What we've got is a Waltz worm in size 16 and a green weenie in size 16 as well. In terms of leader format, what we're using is a micro leader. Really what you want is as thin as possible for a Euro nymphing leader. So what we're saying here with a micro leader is essentially the setup I've got is tapered cider, more or less just down to 4X. And that again is probably something I'll have to do a separate video on for you, maybe comparing, contrasting some of the leader formats I've used throughout the years. But in essence, this micro leader paired with a 10-foot one weight, paired with size 16, or in some cases today 18 flies, that's gonna get us down super quick. It's gonna give us great, and I do mean great, one would even call it with the setup of the rods, ideal. And with that said, our goal is just to catch as many wild trout as possible using some impressionistic patterns of a Waltz worm and a green weenie, which we'll talk about as we fish. So without belaboring this, let's get into fishing, and thanks for tuning back in. I really hope you enjoy and learn something from it. Alrighty, so let's get out here. Let's aggressively chase some fish. We're gonna Euro nymph. We're going to fish this Diamondback one weight. It's a 10-foot rod. I've got on it a Ideal Nymph 1-2 reel, so that pairs with it. And realistically, that is going to be about as light as you can go. So 10-foot one weight rod with a 1-2 reel. I'm using a micro rig, so that keeps me also super light. And on here, I've got 6X tippet, and I'm using 2 size 16 flies. One of them is a Waltz, and then the other is a green weenie. So since we're in, there we go. And that's what that fish took, is the green weenie. Since we are in summer mode and inchworms are making their way out, that's becoming a viable food for them. And you know, for those that have, you know, fished a mop fly before, then you know how effective those can be. And in the summer, something very similar, just in a smaller fashion, the green weenie can pick up a bunch of wild browns too. And it's just a super simple little fly. I've got on here a little chartreuse bead too, so it really stays pretty neon throughout. And you know, again, just going with a smaller size of it in size 16 with about a I believe it's a 2.5 bead. There's another bite. So we're just gonna try to figure these fish out a little bit, and you know, put a couple in the basket today. That is the hope. And all we're doing right now is just bringing it through this nice long uniform riffle where we've got good current, good flow. It's a good place for a trout to sit, because all they're getting is a conveyor belt of food being brought down towards them. And the hope is that there's some cress or sal, or there are some, you know, almost inchworm, big protein chunks being brought their way at some point, and these fish will ultimately fall for our presentation if we can do it in a dead drift format and stay in contact with our flies and register takes. So casting a little further across the stream now. Just a little bit further than I like to usually get ahead of the rod. So right now I'm standing in silt, for example. You know, it's all along this bank here leading up. There we go, another one. Another green weenie eater. Now, I am gonna, yep, and I'm gonna lose fish today, and that's okay. But I'm gonna fight these fish a little bit more aggressively because I'm not super concerned if we have those LDRs or long distance releases. I'm looking to fish quick, catch fish, and you know, if stuff comes off along the way, that's all right. But what I was saying is I'm kind of walking in the silt right here that hopefully you can see. I know it's really low light right now. We got started today at just before 7 o'clock, and you know, right now it's not even, I think it's right around 8 o'clock, and I've got a full day to fish. But nevertheless, I like standing, you know, kind of close to the bank and keeping my feet out of the water as much as possible for the areas I'm gonna fish, and then, you know, work in the water that ultimately has this darker color, whether it's emerald green or black. You just want something that contrasts what the banks look like. And then when you get in those riffles with those colors, oftentimes that's where the fish sit, and that's where you can pick off quite a few when you find those differences in color, the transitions. It's a wonderful thing in trout fishing. So we're back into our next riffle. I think we got a little bit of depth here where we should be able to pick off a fish, I hope. Make some nice long casts and try to see if maybe this green weenie is going to work in another location. There's an eat. I was just late to the party on the hook set. There he is. Green weenie for the win. So we'll see how that fly does today. If it really does do super, I'll start tying up some and putting them on the website. I know that a lot of people that watch the videos, which I really appreciate, they fish a lot of the same patterns as me, and not everybody ties. So if you can tie a green weenie, all the better. And if you can, or just wanted to, you know, dabble with one that I do before you go out, and today's video proves that, you know, you'll catch them with that, then by all means grab some off the website, and it would be hugely appreciated. It really does help out, and I always love getting the reports from people and hearing, you know, their successes, you know, separate from me. I mean, this is always cool to make a video, connect with everybody, and, you know, share my story. But ultimately, you know, you're a big part of what goes on the river too, and I like hearing your stories too. A little guy that didn't even register the take, but I was just picking up so that I could recast. There we go. It's gonna fall right on a transition line where I just knew there had to be a fish. Good area for a trout to hold, and another one for the green weenie. So we talked about earlier today, transition lines, you know, and just about reading water and where fish sit. And this eager little fella, nice and fat, maybe he's been eating a bunch of inchworms prior, but there you go. Off and running. He was sitting in this light to dark transition, and I think in any river system that's one of the keys to success in many cases, but in particular in this river, when you can find that, you know, light brown to emerald green or light brown to dark kind of transition water, that's where those fish love to congregate, just in between those contour lines. Something about that drop, something about that color. They, I think they just feel a lot more protected. And if you can tuck casts in within a foot or two of those lines, a lot of times you're gonna find some pretty eager fish. So, and that's exactly where that guy was. So there's another one right on that line. We just gotta work our way up a little bit because that's where we picked him off. Okay, good. Right on the line. Another eat. Super active fish today. Really active. The nice part is for summer, we've got really nice flows right now. We're at like 85, 90 CFS, which usually this river this time of year is sitting around 30. So to think that we're about 3x the water flow really has another component of what's going to lead to success. You know, you're dealing with almost 3 times the depth of what they're used to this time of year, so they can spread out. They, you know, are happy. They're eating pretty eagerly in a lot of different water types. So yeah, that to the mix with a good selection of flies for the time of year, you can have yourself a banner day. And that's our hope today, is to kind of make that possible. There we go. This looks like a slightly better one, a little bit lighter in color, but better than the ones we've caught. There we go. And he hooked me with the waltz too. But another one for that green weenie. So I think it's safe to say, boys and girls, that that'll end up on the website. So if you're watching and you want to grab one, they're going to be available to you, and maybe you'll catch some good fish of your own, like this guy. Again, it's all relative, it's all average, but you know, average size trout in this river is about 9 inches, and he's right at about that number, just a nice fat one. So again, sitting right out on the contours. Finding that is, you know, reading water is probably one of the more important skill sets when it comes to will you catch fish. You know, if you're just aimlessly casting into the abyss and not really knowing and thinking what a fish would think and why they're going to eat, where they're going to eat, where they're going to be seasonally, you know, that plays a role. So real quick, just before we even make our next cast, let's think about what we're doing here. It is morning, 8 o'clock. We have no hatch to speak of whatsoever. So dry droppers out, dry fly fishing is out altogether. We can then assume that, you know, fish are going to be eating subsurface, because 90+% of their diet, 95% or more I've heard, even closer to 98, is all subsurface, so they're going to be eating nymphs. It is late July, and we've got this wonderful fog, but, you know, we're into terrestrial season, and terrestrials, what we're talking about is hoppers, crickets, ants, beetles, but also inchworms. And in particular, a lot of times the inchworms, they'll kind of like descend off the tree, and they'll fall right into the water, and they look pretty darn similar to what we've got right here. And then because of the fact that almost every tailwater, freestone, and spring creek in particular have crests and sow bugs, that's why we got our waltz worm. So I'm using to my advantage information. And then last, where would a fish sit? Well, since it's summer, you know, the glides with riffles, especially overhead, you know, kind of protection, that's a beautiful place for a trout to sit. You know, this whole glide in particular, I'm sure, has fish spread all throughout it, but this particular run, because it gets about knee deep instead of ankle or potentially shin deep, since that gets knee deep and you have overhead protection, you've got the current that's flowing in, you've got a log over there, I bet there's probably a dozen or more trout over there. Now, we've been fortunate enough to hook, you know, probably 5 or 6, and we've been able to catch, I think, 2 or 3. You know, it's really just a matter of finding out where they're at and getting good, you know, consistently clean drifts and presentations to them with something that looks realistic. It doesn't have to be perfect, but certainly, you know, a green weenie on a dead drift brought right by a pipeline of food. There's another one. That one took the waltz though. But just a conveyor belt of food in the right time of year, you can do some damage. So a little LDR there again, but nice and fun here. Can't beat it. Late July, super active fish, and just kind of sitting in one little run, picking them off. I still have some room to work a little bit further across. There we go. Green weed eater. That one we got the pause and another LDR. So one thing that you're gonna see on this video is we're gonna lose some fish today. If I hook into a good one, you know, anything that's 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 plus inches, we will fight that a little differently. But for there's another, for the little guys, what's gonna happen is I'm just gonna kind of horse them and force them into me. I'm not that concerned if they come off. We're not trying to prove anything, catching all the little fish in the river. But let's talk about fighting fish, because I've lost a few and we could still lose this one. Fight your battle upstream. Keep side pressure in your rod. Keep the fish under the water, which is why I've lost all the other fish. I let their head get up. And then when you're ready, you just lift that head, use the current to slide it into you. And look at that, the hook's already out. And as a result, the fish is in the net. But you know, this is that slightly above average one that we were talking about. And I don't know, that's probably what, 7 fish hooked in that, with at least 4 or 5 of them landed. So, you know, I think anybody, if they came to the river and just were happy enough to catch 5 to 7 in a day, depending upon how much time you got and what technique you're using, I think that would be a good day. And when we all leave the house, the goal is typically, let's catch some fish. And thankfully so far, oh yeah, thankfully so far, we've been able to catch quite a few. So a little bit better fish, probably similar in size to the last one, maybe slightly larger. Yep, slightly larger. He took the green weenie. So as mentioned, I will absolutely put that on the website, and I look forward to getting the first order with it. I hope that you come out and you catch a bunch of fish with it. And when you do, keep their head down, keep side pressure, and then just slide them with the current right back to you and into your net. That's a really beautiful fish. Really beautiful fish. And again, the hook's out as soon as it hit the net. So I tie everything on barbless hooks. We're out here, not only because it's a Maryland law, but we've been doing that as long as you've been watching the channel. And then we release them right back to their home and let them get to where they need to be. But what I was saying is that, you know, barbless hooks is what we've been using for as long as I can remember with this channel. I've never been a barbed guy unless we're using really big streamers, and then in which case I see the merit in that. But even my jig streamers, they're barbless. So if you lose some fish, you lose some fish, but then that puts you back in the mindset of how are you going to fight fish? And the last 2 that I've been really conscious of fighting, I've landed both. Whereas the smaller ones, when I've just tried to horse them and get them in, I've lost them both. So think about that. If you're losing fish, it's probably a product of how you're fighting them, and less about what type of hook is it, and you know, was it the fish? It could have been a, you know, I hate to say it, but a you problem. Things happen. Nice. We'll say this new rod for the Diamondback, it absolutely delivers on, you know, casting, lightness, how it feels in your hand. There we are. Another one for the green weenie. And again, don't be surprised if we lose this guy, but try to quickly get him in, get him off the hook and back in. So there we go. Cool. So 1 for the waltz and more than I can count for the green weenie. It's a good thing I tied some of those before I left the house today. I only tied 4, so definitely can't lose them all. But when you buy them, you can get them for, typically what I would do is 3 for 9 or 3 for 10, somewhere in that range. So keep an eye on it, but nevertheless, productive little summer fly. I don't think, you know, all year round you should be fishing it, but when you're into inchworm season, I think it's a good idea. I mean, it really represents kind of like what a mop is with the caddis larva and that food form. So it is impressionistic and realistic to trout. So this is not something super foreign to them, but nevertheless, I would probably fish a mop more so in the winter, and an inchworm or green weenie pattern in the summer. I think that would be the play. So lost it. So we're really getting into the thin stuff here, and that's going to make life exponentially harder. But I think what we'll do is, given that we you know, caught 6 or 7 out of here, I want to say. Hooked a couple more, and we're going to work all the way up to the run. Let's, you know, just see what we can get. Can we get, and I'm always in the mindset of, let's get one more. Let's get one more. The goal is always one more. It's never set the day, oh, I got to get 10, I got to get 20, and that's your bar. It's really while you're out on the water, get one more. And then as soon as you do, where's the next spot that one's going to be? So, you know, we really methodically pick that apart from inside to out, dark to light, close to the branches and knot, just ahead of it, and now we're into the head of the riffle, and I still see again about that ankle to shin deep water depth, and I think that would be a good place for a trout to hold. So I wouldn't be surprised if we can get one more in here, and then if we're lucky, one more up there. But this is all too thin over here in my opinion, so the goal right now is get one more. On the waltz, and he was sitting right on that tree, which is why this fish is like pitch black. If I can get him in. There he is. I mean, he probably barely ever comes out of that hole except to eat. And yeah, he is super dark, but right where he's supposed to be. Look at that. A lot of times these fish get really gold and yellow. That's because they're sitting in riffles and they're out in the sunlight, you know. But if you're a fish that never comes out, as a result, you get pretty dark compared to your friends. So nice fish, pretty rewarding to grab one right at the base of a tree. And you know, I put a couple drifts through here, no luck, but as soon as we swung one right into that tree, that's where one grabbed. All right, so we're coming up to a hole that I fished quite a few times. Some of the other stuff where actually the video started, I've never fished there. But now we're getting into a specific part of the river that I really like, and I know that it holds a good number of fish, and we're working into a riffle where they should be kind of sitting and eagerly ready to participate. So, you know, as I work up towards this rock that you may or may not be able to see in the fog, the hope would be, again, let's try to get one more. But realistically, let's shoot for maybe, I don't know, 3 or so in this particular bead of water. We should be able to catch 3 between here and there. So we'll play around with the foam lines just off of the fastest water, and we'll fish the riffles as well. Just got to get up a little bit and over towards the bank. There we go. Now we're in a good position to hunt some trout. And we don't quite have that color contour of the bottom like we had before, but what we do have is faster water, you know, per se, faster water with little pockets of softness just off to the side of them. And oftentimes I find myself fishing the edges of the fastest water. So realistically, as we come up through the inside and far side, it's probably what I like the most. But it is summer, so at the end of the day, fish are sitting in riffles with intentionality. So if they're going to be sitting in there, it's to eat, and as a result, it's probably a good idea to hit the middle of it. Again, back to the time of year, since it's summer, heads of riffles and, you know, heavy parts of runs will host fish. So it's definitely foolish to skip over that, but it's still smart to hit the outer seams of it, kind of like what we're about to do right now. This will put me in a drift. There's an eat. That'll put me in an area that I can get that slow glide and ride, where a fish is more than likely darting in and out of the faster stuff to eat. This will give me a nice long drift. Okay, let's cast a little further across. There he is. Nope, lost him. Again, letting him get up to the top of the water column is always a concern, but done purposefully, not unintentionally. If we hook into the better ones, we'll keep them down. Ooh, there's a nice eat. Very nice eat. Another one. We're just letting this one swing. Try a couple more through there before we move up. There he is. On the waltz. All right, just like we want it. Coming off for the little guys. All right, let's slide up. Try to hit the inside part of this run first. Green weenie eater. So that puts us at about that number 3 that we were talking about. There would be 4. So not even wetting our hands simply because we're not even touching them. We're just kind of grabbing the hook, a little shake of the fish, and barbless hooks, off they come. But green weenies and waltz are still producing, that's for sure. There we go. That one grabbed like almost instantly. I was thankfully in contact pretty quick. You know, when you make a cast and you finish and you basically get your system in line as quickly as possible, you can register some of the most faint strikes. I mean, oftentimes the death of a Nymphing angler is losing part of your drift, not being able to, you know, be in contact and take advantage of that tight line that you got. They call it a tight line advantage for a reason. And you know, if you can make a 25 or so cast, you know, ideally we probably keep it closer to 20 a lot of the times, but if you can make a 25-foot cast and be in contact from start to finish, your odds of catching a fish are pretty darn good. So we'll demonstrate that again right here. We're in the, oh, lost him. We're in the softer seam. We're in contact as soon as it hits. Those flies are still descending, but as they descend, if you're able to stay tight to your system, then oftentimes you can detect a boatload of strikes, as evidenced by what's been going on here. So let's keep it going. We're gonna just, I think for the video's sake, just finish out this all the way up to the head of the run. You know, again, goal is 1 more. We've been lucky enough to catch, I think, 4 so far in this little part, and hook quite a few more. But if we can just get 1 more as we work up, you know, I think that's a win. That's a success. But they've been pretty active participants, so just casting as far as we can while still maintaining a good drift, having good contact. It really does give you an advantage. So I'm not surprised that I didn't get anything in here and here, but right in there, you gotta get an eat, you gotta catch a fish, especially with the way things have gone today. So let's tuck one in here, and I wouldn't be surprised within the first drift or 2 we're hooking up. Yep, waltz worm. So really rewarding. All right, so we got our 1 more. Let's see if we can't get 1 more. Just got to get this green weenie out, but the green weenie's got good weight to it that also helps me to get that size 18, excuse me, that might be a 16, 2/8. I believe they're both 16 and 2/8. For the green weenies, I'll only be able to tie them in 2 different sizes, and one is going to be about a size 14 with a 3/5 bead, and then the other is going to be size 16 with a 2.5. Ideally, I would love to put it on a 3 or a 2.8, but the chartreuse beads can be really hard to find. But as you can see today, the 16 with a 2.5 has worked just fine. All right, let's hit the further pocket with the foam over there. And now what we're doing is sinking our sighter a little bit, because realistically, I don't know if we have the depth with the tippet I've got on. Probably in that furthest side where I just cast to, we do. But then as it goes through the rest of the drift, we don't quite have the depth. So as a result, sometimes what I'll do is I'll sink the sighter if I don't think I've got enough. Last little area we're gonna chase is on the far side. All right, that's gonna be it. Well, that's gonna wrap it up for today's video. I really appreciate you watching this. First and foremost, I appreciate all the support. It's been awesome to do the guide trips. It's been awesome to sell people flies, and you know, hopefully today you got to see how we pick apart water and catch some fish. I mentioned earlier in the video I was gonna add the green weenie to the website, so if you're interested in grabbing any, it helps support me, but also, you know, if you're not a fly tyer, it helps you realistically, and you can use these same flies and catch fish on your waterway as well. So thank you for tuning back in, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.